Good morning, YouTubers. Today we're going to be covering part 2 in what to look for when buying a $500 Ford truck or 70s Ford truck. We're going to be covering the frames, different things to be looking at. I was going to pull a couple different frames that I've got, some cabin chassis, some Bronco frames out, but we're in Maine, it's snowing right now, and there's just no way I'm going to be able to, and I need to keep moving on this project because I've got a limited time. So I just want to go over and cover some of the basics, and most of what I'm going to say is going to apply. It doesn't matter if you've got an F100 or an F350 or cabin chassis or a Bronco. All of these elements are still the same. You've got three basic elements that you need to consider. You have to consider, has the frame been patched? Is there any welding, patches, fish plates, anything like that, any modifications done to the frame? Like here, I've shortened the frame and I've modified this. It's very important to check it and make sure the frame is straight. You know, if you don't have a good frame, then starting out is going to be difficult. The next thing you want to look for is you want to look for rust holes. Anywhere where there's, you know, the springs attach, or like right in here where this shock mount is, and it can trap debris, trap stuff in there, and cause issues. Another area to look at is down in here where the spring perch mounts to the frame. You can see we've got some separation going on right in there. Those are important things to look at. Look at how pitted the frame is. Look at things like the brake line mount here. You can see the spring perch here is pretty much shot. Look at how pitted the frame is along the edges in through here. You can see that this edge is starting to get pitted up. I'm just going to grind this back about an eighth or a quarter of an inch just to clean that up. But you can see there's some pretty good pitting going on in there. We're going to pick the truck up. We're going to go underneath, and I'm going to show you some of the stuff to look at underneath. Like I said, this is just going to be a quick video because the next video is going to be replacing this piece right here. I'm going to do that today. I've got the perch and replacing this and keeping these factory or a similar type of factory rivet in place. You can see it's not the exact same, but it's as close as what you can find. I'll be right back once we get this truck up in the air. All right, so we're back. We got the truck up in the air. One thing to look at as well, especially with these spring perches, is make sure that the bottom of them is not rotted out, because this can trap water and debris. This is one I just replaced, and like I said, I wanted to do this video before I did that, but I just didn't have the time. But you can see why I replaced it. It's rotted out. Now another thing, you can see on this front frame horn how thin it's getting here. This mounting bracket, although this is for the radiator support, if you have a Bronco uses a very similar system. They just have holes in the frame all the way down through that a rubber mount would mount onto. These will get really paper thin right in through here and will break. It's not an easy fix to do if this in fact breaks. In fact, so now that we're underneath the truck, you can see right in here how paper thin this mount is. This is where the bump stop would go for the rear end. This is something I'm probably going to have to address. I wasn't really planning on fixing that, but now that I look at it closer and I kind of beat it with a hammer a little bit, it's really starting to get bad. We're going to move forward and looking over in here at this cross member. This cross member is in pretty good shape right in through here, but a lot of times these will bulge out when rust and debris comes down in from the top and comes out through. Now, one of the differences between an F-150 and a 250 or an F-150 and a four-wheel drive is four-wheel drives will have a gusset that kind of goes in here like, kind of like so. These will trap dirt and debris in there and will rot out as well. So it's really important to look at these. Nobody makes these aftermarket. You can kind of take one out of an 80s style truck and make it work. It's not perfect. You can do it. Moving forward down the frame, you want to look at these mounts in through here to make sure. Malfunction. To make sure that this is not rotted out and the mount's coming down through, or that the rubber's completely gone. This one's in pretty decent shape, so I'm not going to touch it, not going to do anything with it. This is a low buck project, so like I said, I'm just going over the basics. Another important thing to look at is right in here, this edge. I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but you can see this edge is really pitted in through here. If you want to have a nice looking truck, something you can take to car shows, that's something you've got to address. I'm going to probably do a video on how to fix this, and really all you do is you take two brass blocks, you sandwich the frame in between those, and then you just weld this back up, clean it up with a grinder, and that will straighten that edge right out. Now up in here, this cross member is another area that traps dirt in here and will rot out this transmission cross member. So that's something you really want to be mindful of. Any areas that can trap dirt, debris into is an area you want to look at on a frame, especially if it's a truck alongside the road. And we're going to look at right in here. This is another area where the spring perch and the shock perch goes. Dirt can fall down into here and get trapped into there, either on that side or over here on this side, down in through here. So you really want to look at this. If you have to replace this, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more work than what you think it would be. And then of course right in here we have our radiator support with our mounts. Now these rubber mounts are just about shot. You can see they're swollen, but the frame, if you look in there, the frame is still pretty thick right there, so still in decent shape. I'm not going to do anything with it because, like I said, this is a low buck project, so it's not worth me fixing for the time periods that I've got. Another very important consideration is if the truck's ever been in an accident, look at the front frame horns up in here as well as down here. See if they've ever been straightened, if there's ever a little gusset put in here. If you see a gusset in here, a little triangular piece that fits in there, that is a indication that at some point this frame horn has gotten bent. A body shop put it on a frame machine, straightened it out, and to reinforce it, they added a corner in here to make it stronger. The other thing is, if the truck has ever had a plow onto it, if you have a four-wheel drive, look to see if there's any cracks that come down through here. This one's got a bunch of junk in here, but there'll be cracks that come down through and come across the bottom from the weight of the headgear of the plow and the stresses of the plow. And then there again, if they put a lift kit into it, you can't really see it here, but you want to look on a four-wheel drive on the opposite side of the steering box, kind of right in this general area right in here. Look to see if there's any plates or if there's any cracks. If the truck's had a plow onto it or if it's been lifted, it puts a lot of stress onto the steering box, which in turn can cause the frame to crack. So all of those things are important to look at with the frame, and like I said, it'll help you make a decision. A truck that's a parts truck versus a truck that is a fixer-upper or a restoration project, a lot of times comes down to whether or not the frame is in good shape. It takes time to repair the frame. Any repair that you do on a frame will take 10 times longer than what you plan on. You may think it's just a simple, put a patch into it and that's it, but there's always more. You're always going to find more than just one thing. So keep that in mind if you're looking at a truck and say, oh geez, it just needs this one little patch. Or if someone has patched it before you and you think you can come back behind them and do a better job at patching it, a lot of times the metal that's around that patch is so weak that it's not worth it. It's almost better off to get another frame. That's it for now. Stay tuned. We're going to be doing the video on how to redo the rivets for the shock mounts and replacing that chunk for the shock mount, and that will be later on this afternoon. As always, stay on your projects and keep these old Fords rolling.